My garden is split up into different sections. I've got 5 beds here, a greenhouse, and then 4 beds over there in the wild garden. And that seems like a lot. And to me, that's a big garden. I know there's a lot of you guys out there and a lot of people out there that have much bigger gardens. And, you know, my goal to get to grow food was to be able to grow enough to feed my family most of the time. I think that where we're set up now, if we needed to grow enough food to feed our family, I think with a few additions it would be possible. But for the most part, like, this is what we wanted to do. And I know there's people out there that either are hobby gardeners, they just want to see something grow. There's people that just want to enjoy some fresh foods. And then there's people that just kind of like me. And then there's other people that just want to grow every single thing, no matter what. Never go to the grocery store for it, and all aspects are respectable. This is going to be kind of where I'm thinking I'm going to take this direction over the fall and then into winter and spring. The spring and summer, this is my main producing gardens here, these beds here. It gets the most sun. It works out pretty good. I get a little bit of shade on this side, some reprieve. This side gets more sun. So it works out pretty good. Now in the winter time though, these 2 beds are my best beds. And then the greenhouse is, it gets a lot of shade, but it does do the trick. And then these beds over here are actually a lot better than I thought they would be. And this area is just a wild garden. It was basically cut out of the woods, and it's taking time to get in and get everything under control. But we are still growing in them, and we're working on the soil, but that's kind of part of the plan as well. Try and think about it like, you know, you got to fix things in your garden, but I can't fight it. And I know the best thing I can do for my garden is to plant in it. So as we decide what to plant, we make those decisions accordingly, and then we kind of fit it all into our plan. So what I do is I start with like all of my constraints, you know. For example, these beds over here, they all are either compacted or get a little bit extra shade. And so then you have like this bed here, it gets a lot of shade in the morning, and then it gets good afternoon sun. And so we have that to deal with. We have the greenhouse that gets a fair amount of shade throughout the day, but then it gets afternoon sun, so we kind of count on that. And then these beds, they get shade, so we're dealing with that. But then we also have these trellises lining them. So we know that we can't have anything spilling out or anything like that. All of these are constraints that we deal with, not to mention, and this is a big one, which you wouldn't think it would be, but these 2 beds get the most sun. So for the season coming up, which is fall, it gets hot. And so we've got to cool them, which is what we're doing here. So, you know, we work with all of this into making our plan. So what I do is I start first and foremost with my constraints. And then for these beds over here, we're going to do a lot of root vegetables. The only root vegetable I'm not really going to do over there, which I'm kind of bummed about, and I'm not even saying I'm not going to do it yet. I don't want to say I'm not. But it doesn't look like I'm going to be doing a lot of rutabagas over there. I did them in the back bed and they worked good. I just tried to practice crop rotation. So I'm going to try and figure it out, but the way they need to be planted and the time, it's just not really fitting in to that section of the garden right now. And the way that my crop rotation is going, which is another limitation, because not only do you have the limitations of the bed, but then I have the limitations of the rotation. So then I have to factor all that in. So I'm not going to put them in this back corner where the corn was. This bed's going to get cleared out this week, and it would be great to plant in this bed, but I don't want to put it in this bed because my broccoli was here last year, and then I'd have to move it to another bed in which I had broccoli also, so I can't do them side by side. So we're just going to move on and just have this be a different vegetable altogether. And we really do want to work with the compaction, so we're going to plant appropriately for that. That brings up something that I was trying to do this year and correct some of these constraints that I have. You know, when I said that I put broccoli in that bed over there and then broccoli in this bed over here, that's an issue. because what it does is if I practice crop rotation like I believe in, and I do, then it makes it more difficult. So if I can focus one bed on broccoli and one bed on the rutabaga, then over the next season, I can kind of rotate a little bit easier around, and then it kind of works for me. Because in my area, or for me personally, and in my area, it seems like the cool weather crops, we actually get a lot more variety and a lot more forgiving time to grow them and get them to a full harvest. So we want to take advantage of that. But this bed right here, ground cherries are just about done. I'm actually, as we speak, it's getting injected with fertilizer. So we're gonna give it a couple days just to kind of see if anything pops. But we're gonna start putting stuff into it this week. We're gonna start direct seeding our rutabagas. And I'm direct seeding them basically because the rutabagas that I started, man, I never have good luck starting seeds for fall, ever. It's like this next hurdle that I've got to cross. But we'll get there. Not to worry, we will get there. But we're gonna just direct seed those and then move on. And then as we pull that stuff out, we will. And then the other thing that I do is I succession plant or succession sow. And so that's really important for me because I'm not getting all of a certain crop at the same time. Now you do have to be a little bit on top of your game as far as timing goes this time of year, because if it's going to be a cold snap, you don't want it to zap your plants completely. Luckily, it's very forgiving here, so we do have that as an option. But if you remember correctly, we're doing this hybrid versus heirloom test on these Brussels sprouts. And so what I did is I planted the back row, then the middle row a couple weeks later, and then the front row a couple weeks later. So in theory, they should come to fruition at different times. And we're gonna do the same over here. So remember, this bed that we did the other day is completely 90% ready to be planted. Sorry about the view, but I'm finding with all my contraptions, I'm real limited on how I can get in there. But this one right here, we just need to do a couple more things. We need to just double check our lines, rebury them, and then we can plant, and we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna start in the back row and then work our way forward. And so I'm actually hardening off my cabbage plants right now, and the issue is it's gonna get pretty hot. So I need to get these plants out here under the shade as soon as possible. And that's what we want to do. So we're going to work on that, and I'm going to really push the envelope. I think today is going to be like not too hot, and then it's going to be back up in the mid 90s again. So I need to get them under that shade cloth to finish hardening off within the next day or two. So we're going to be working on that. But by doing that planting method, that works out well for me. Now here's another issue I've come across this year. This bed is my second tomato bed, which is doing great. I already see more tomatoes to be harvested, so that works out good. And the way that it's gonna work is kind of weird because I'm gonna let them stay as long as possible. We're gonna get as much as we can out of these plants, but at the same time, I wanna put something else in its space. And I don't know exactly what I wanna put in its space. I know what I want, but I don't know what I can put in its space to get the harvest done in time. And so that's gonna be a really important factor for this. So if I have to let this bed rest, it won't be the end of the world, because honestly, if I plant something in it now, or when these tomatoes are done, it'll have had something growing in it for, I'd say, a solid year. And that's a lot. I did rest for about a month, so there is that, but I would like to get one more thing in there, let it grow, and then rest it for a while until next spring. So, we're working on that, because what I've found is when I do these rapid replantings over and over and not give the bed any time to replenish or recover from that, then what happens is I don't get as good of a harvest, or what happens is in the fall, the plants don't grow fast enough and they can't take these cold snaps, which they should be able to take once they get to a certain age. So this is part of the plan for, getting as much as we can out of this, is working this bed, but also identifying like, hey, this plant's going to be done now. Let's get it out and let's get it refurbish the soil as much as possible, and then work on planting something that's not like a super long crop. Like, I wouldn't put carrots in this bed necessarily, because they got to sit in there. By the time I get them in the ground, they'll be in there for a couple months. So, you know, something like maybe, I mean, I don't really want to do a whole bed of radishes. I don't like them that much, but you know, if we did a whole bed of radishes, that would work out good, because we get, you know, a month grow time, harvest the radishes, let it rest. And so by timing everything out in the garden and succession sowing will allow us to have a mostly perpetual harvest through the fall into winter, because I'm in zone 8A in North Carolina. So our winters aren't crazy cold. We can get cold, but generally it's not like a murdering cold to the plants. So, you know, the issue that I'm having right now too is I'm hardening off as we speak my cabbages and my broccoli, which are going to go here, but I still have another couple weeks before this comes up. So I'm going to have to do like a pull and then just replant right away. And so even though that's not the best in the world, what I've done in the past is I'll plant it, and then I'll plant my broccoli around September or October, and I end up letting it sit throughout the winter. So even though I'm going to be pushing this bed really hard, I can hopefully feed it heavy, compost it heavy, add some compost to it, and then let that stuff kind of just grow it out. Hopefully by December, get the stuff out of it, and then it can sit for a month or two. And that's going to be my best scenario, because what that's going to do is, because broccoli can be kind of iffy here if it's going to make it through the winter. Sometimes it does great, and sometimes it gets hurt by the cold, but the cabbage doesn't. So we're going to have multiple beds throughout the garden that are going to be empty, but the plan is to get a harvest out of them and still leave them empty so that we can get everything we need out of it and still have something coming out. Kind of let this pepper bed go wild. I mean, it is in the wild garden, so there is that. So the plan with this bed is, because our biggest pepper season is basically from now until September, even into October, we can start to get a lot, but we'll also start pulling plants periodically as we see fit. So what we're going to do with this bed is, as this front row empties out, we're going to start putting in spinach. And then as the bed goes further and further back and gets emptied out, and hopefully it all works good and just starts going back more and more and more, you know, we can just kind of cut plants like sequentially down, then we can start adding in rows of spinach as needed. It would be a best case scenario, and I got to tell you guys, I never have the best case scenario work out, but you know what? I'm optimistic, and I always hope that we're going to have the best case scenario. So that's what we're going to do. Now, so my plan moving forward, in order to keep food coming in appropriately for our household, is to work on timing everything out. Timing is key, either by variety or season or planting dates or seed starting dates. And this is our big win for this year. We timed this out absolutely perfectly. I couldn't be happier with the way these tomatoes are turning out. We've planned them and planted them and started them. This whole bed actually worked out really, really good. Correctly, we had garlic and onions in it. We pulled the garlic and onions out, we let it rest, and then we planted our tomatoes. Worked out perfect. And if you even want to take it a step further, now I can't say this one's going to work out perfect yet, because you know it's Brussels sprouts and all, but this bed here had potatoes in it. We planted them, we grew them. Could have left them in for a little bit longer, but I didn't, and then let it rest, and then we replanted it. And so that really worked out good, and that's my plan moving forward, is to really work these timings in. And this monocropping thing that I've been doing, I'm telling you, it really is helping with that, because even though garlic and onions isn't monocropping, it still was harvested at the same time, and because of the season in which I planted, it wasn't a really big deal. So I'm going to continue to move that, and it's like, I know from now on, from here on out, the deal is Wherever I plant my onions and my garlic, I put my tomatoes in behind them for my second crop. You know, maybe we'll see how it goes this year, but maybe when my potatoes are done, we put in our Brussels sprouts right behind it. And maybe that's how we can work this to our advantage. You know, I'm curious to see how the sweet potato bed's gonna go. You know, it's gonna be a quick planting, like I said, and it's gonna be real tricky, but moving forward, I'm kind of starting to, and hopefully you'll see the evolution of this plan over time, where we're kind of working out the way things are gonna unfold and the planting dates can change. Just like with this pepper bed all the way over there, we can do the same thing where maybe we grow our peppers and then we know when our peppers are done, we put our spinach behind it. And that's how you start to develop a plan that's gonna give you a great perpetual harvest throughout your garden and work your beds to the maximum of their capabilities, while still understanding that you need to replenish them and you need to rest them. And we don't need to be too eager and work the ground and the earth too hard, but there's steps that we can take. And so all these steps I'm gonna be doing in the upcoming weeks and months and winter and all that stuff to help rebuild soil, because there is a season for all of this and we're coming into that season very, very fast.